Hi, everyone. Welcome. So today's presentation is Signs of Spring, and I'm going to be showing you contemporary art and art throughout history that works with this motif of spring. I think it will be really fun and really joyful and really inspiring, and I hope that you get some ideas for maybe some art that you want to make this spring. So first of all, just let us know where you're from and what does spring look like where you live. So if you're on Zoom, you can put it in the chat, or if you are on YouTube, you can just put it in the comments, okay? So we're gonna get started, and I'll let you guys know that actually where I live right now, one sign of spring that I've been seeing is crocuses. They just popped up just a few days ago. And tomorrow is officially the first day of spring. So where I live up north in Massachusetts, that is always the first sign of spring. Okay, so let's get started. And I'm just going to move my video up here. I think that should be fine, but if I'm in the way, I might just turn off my video. So I thought I'd start with Impressionism in France because when I think of spring art, I think of these kinds of landscapes. So here we have a painting by Claude Monet. And something I want to talk about with you is the type of green that we see in spring. So look at these trees, this orchard here, and the green in the hillside here and in the grass a little bit too. There's a lot of yellow in this green. So when we think of a spring green, when we're mixing our paints, you want to be thinking of that kind of lighter, more yellowish toned green. Not like the darker, richer, more blue toned greens that we tend to see in summer. And here's a really great example of what a spring green looks like. Like, look at that beautiful, more yellow green. This is Van Gogh. And he's even brought green into the sky here. We kind of have like an aqua sky juxtaposed with this cobalt blue here. So very imaginative, not true to life, but definitely evokes that sense of spring. And of course, I just want to take a moment to pause and say, most of this is based off of my experience of spring, or people in the Northern Hemisphere's experience of spring. So if you live in a more tropical climate, this might not be your experience, but just putting that out there. We will have some different stuff, but starting with landscapes that are more true to the Northern Hemisphere. So the Pink Orchard by Van Gogh. Again, we have that very like bright yellowish green in the grass. And obviously an orchard, that's a sign of spring. We see all those flowering trees, all those orchards in bloom. And I really like how, if you look closely, all of the trees here are actually painted in blue. It gives a really nice atmospheric effect. Of course, we don't necessarily need it to be outdoors. We don't need a landscape to evoke spring. Here's an interior, and again, you can tell by that that yellowish green, that this is a spring day that she's looking out onto. And I also want to say too, with this sort of green, when you're mixing your colors, I can definitely see that there's maybe some burnt sienna mixed in here to kind of give it a certain nuance. And if I were mixing a spring green, I would probably do that, like just a dab of burnt sienna to kind of add some complexity there. And even, you know, this whole scene, her dress is green, the shutters, the walls are this olive green. Another one with Van Gogh. Again, we're seeing those colors, yellows. Sometimes this minty green too is associated with spring. And of course we have our pinks, our blooms. Here is a painting by Matisse. And this painting, you know, you wouldn't really know what season it is other than the plum blossoms right here. They're giving it away and telling us that this is spring. Here is another interior with a still life of flowers, David Hockney. I believe this is digital art, just based on how it looks. Daffodils obviously are spring and bulb. My favorite flower, actually. And here are a couple other David Hockney. Again, I think this is a digital painting, 2 digital paintings. To me, these both evoke spring because we have this like fuchsia. And again, this green that is still kind of lighter and has those yellow undertones. It doesn't look like a summer green. And of course, we have rain. Not all spring art has to be pretty. This is Anselm Kiefer. I actually really like his work. It's very intense and moody, as you can see. And this is called Spring. This to me very much looks like early spring. This is what it looks like where I live right now. This recording is happening on March 19th for those of you who are watching later. I live in New England, so we have these ochre fields right now. You know, we're just starting to get little hints of green here, but most of the landscape is still this sort of muddy ochre. And you can see this looks like these are fields. He has little, almost looks like corn maybe, kind of, or it could be any kind of crop kind of poking up through the fields here. And even this road, it looks wet. Of course, rain is also a sign of spring, something we associate with spring. I really like this one. I think it really shows the rain, which is hard to paint, but you see all of these kind of diagonal strokes and some vertical strokes that, I mean, these almost look like he dug into the canvas. It's very interesting. I'd love to see this painting in person. And again, we kind of sometimes see that minty green in spring, like especially in the morning. You have morning dew or on a rainy day. The green might look a little bit minty. Another rainy painting, this one by Monet. This one is much softer, much more impressionistic. Obviously, he's the king of Impressionism. Very, very sort of, yeah, just really like soft and velvety, I think. I think this is a really nice painting. And for something a little more modern, for those of you getting bored by all the Impressionist paintings, this is by Gerard Richter. And I just want to point out too, you can see that spring green I've been talking about, that yellowish green in the back. So clearly for this, he painted something, looks like some horizontal strokes back there. And then he took some white and gray and blue paints and kind of smushed them down, probably with a palette knife, over that underpainting to create this effect of rain. Really beautiful Rain Clouds by John Constable. Very energetic strokes. And now we'll look at some figures. This is very, very idyllic. Springtime by Claude Monet. Very romantic. We have the dappled light on her dress. And of course, we have those yellowish greens that I've been talking about. Sort of light yellowish greens here with a little hint of that minty green. And then we have more yellow and even some browns back here too. Some of that burnt sienna I was talking about must be mixed in here with maybe some ochre. This is a contemporary artist, a friend of mine, Jesse Edelman. And yeah, I thought this, really reminded me of spring. I don't know if that's what she was thinking when she painted it or not, but just the pink flowers with the green field. Again, we have those sort of lighter. Hers is more of a minty, but still yellowish green at times. This maybe is more of a later spring. Okay, and then of course, not all spring has to be beautiful and flowery. We have Spring by Andrew Wyatt. And I remember watching a documentary about him, and I think this was based off his neighbor who passed away. So you kind of have the snow melting in the field. It's a very somber piece, but I just wanted to share something a little bit different from some of the other stuff we've been watching so far. Andrew Wyatt, by the way, is one of my favorite painters. And this one is very different. I really like it because, this could have just been a painting of like these two people kissing on a stoop. But the painter, Carrie James Marshall, he made this frame, sort of like this vignette with these flowers. And you can also see like they're wearing long sleeves. It doesn't look necessarily like summer. Like I get spring vibes from this with the again, that kind of minty yellowish green and the pale pink, very much like spring colors here. Here's another one by Carrie James Marshall. Again, we kind of get the sense that this is a springtime painting because of the yellowish greens. Looks like there are dandelions blooming in the lawn. And, this one is a little bit different from what we've been looking at. It's more of like in a park. And obviously there's a lot of conceptual messages going on here. Study for Past Times is the title. A lot of spring activities happening as well. Another park scene by Ramiro Gomez. He is known for painting, he's the son of Mexican immigrants, and he paints a lot of, I think, what he would call invisible workers. So, people are doing lawn care, maintenance, nannies, those sorts of people that are kind of making the city run, so to speak. He's based in Los Angeles. And again, we kind of get the sense this is springtime because of the pinks and the greens and their clothing. They're not wearing short sleeve shirts here. Another one by Ramiro Gomez, Gardeners. It's another springtime theme. And if you're interested in his work, there's an NPR article about him, and you can also listen, but I found an article online and it's really interesting stuff. More gardening. This is by Natalia Goncharova. And you can also see these colors are a little bit different from the paintings we've been looking at so far. Here we have more blues and purples, actually. But we can still see it's springtime because we have these sort of hanging flowers that look like a tree in bloom. And then it looks like they're planting tulips. Gardening in general too is something we really associate with spring more than any other season, I would say. It's when we begin gardening anyway. Spring in the Country by Grant Wood. Planting crops. We also have these, looks like apple blossoms perhaps here in the foreground. Another flowering tree as well. And again, that yellowish green. This is a Roman fresco, and it's funny, I found this during my research because I at some point had created a Instagram account for my gardening, and I made this as the profile picture. I just love this little painting. I think it's really beautiful. And this is Flora, goddess of spring. And I just think she's lovely. Going farther back into art history, Primavera by Botticelli, very famous painting. A lot of spring motifs here. Obviously, we have some pregnant women here. Fertility is a huge, historically speaking, a huge symbol of spring. And obviously it is, at least in the animal kingdom, it is a time when a lot of animals are born. Another piece about fertility. This is Venus of Willendorf, and she's been in the news lately. Actually, they discovered that the stone used to make this little sculpture came from Italy, but I believe she was found in Austria. So it's given insights into those ancient people, that they actually traveled quite far. Here's a sculpture, Spring by Barbara Hepworth. And again, if you look closely, you might be wondering, what does this have to do with spring? But This artist was known for dealing with ideas around fertility. And if you look at the shape of this sculpture, it is shaped like an egg. And she also did a lot of kind of conceptual work about inside and outside. And obviously we have these lines kind of drawing us in. So those are other themes that might be related to spring or fertility. Again, we have our theme of eggs or fertility here. This is René Magritte, a French surrealist artist. And of course, spring also, sometimes we think of lovers or romance. This is Eternal Springtime by Rodin. It's a very famous sculpture. There's also a version of this in bronze. And we also do a lot of cleaning in spring. I found this painting online. I'm not familiar with the artist, Bill Bell, or it looks like his signature says William C. Bell. But I just thought it was a fun painting, very animated, and there's a lot going on. There's a guy washing his car. You see a wheelbarrow out there, a woman sweeping, and then they've got, looks like they're drying out their sheets or something in the top window. Another spring cleaning interior. So again, just an example that if you don't want to paint like a landscape, you don't have to. You can still work with this theme of spring in many different ways. Here's a beautiful painting by Georgia O'Keeffe. Again, we have that yellowish green and that purple. We know immediately when we see those colors together that this is spring. Here's another one by Georgia O'Keeffe. To me, this looks more like early spring, a little bit earlier, before all the blooms are out, when the trees are just starting to pop their leaves. And again, you have that burnt sienna color, and that, like, this is almost yellow. This is almost reading as yellow, but we kind of know it's like just on the cusp of green and yellow, that very early leaf color. Another one by Georgia O'Keeffe. Just showing you something different in case you're like, I hate the color green. You can do whatever you want with spring. It can be any color palette. Tulip Flower by Georgia O'Keeffe. Again, those same colors we've been talking about. Pink and green and yellow. Some blue. Just for something different, this is Yokoyama Taikan. I'm not sure if I'm saying their name right, but I thought, this was nice to show because not everyone necessarily wants to paint like a rural landscape. You might be by the ocean. Clearly, this is a beach. There's a crab. We have some dandelions blooming. That kind of tells us, hey, maybe this is springtime. And also the colors again, like we have some minty greens, some yellows. Just feels like this isn't midsummer. and more flowers. So obviously blooming flowers, early spring flowers being a theme of spring. These are Quaker Ladies, or bluettes, as I would call them, by Andrew Wyatt. And again, a lot of that burnt sienna, a lot of those yellows in this sort of muddy looking, you can tell this is like a very damp north. This is in the Northeast, I'm guessing, probably Pennsylvania. That's where he painted. These flowers normally come up, I want to say April or May, around here. And some photography. Cherry Blossoms by Ansel Adams. I thought this was nice to show because of the composition he's created, but the way he framed this photograph, he's really highlighted the cherry blossoms almost as like a pattern, or they almost read as like a figure. They're kind of like cascading down, and they start to become abstract, kind of like their own thing. So if you are interested in painting flowers, but you want to, or photographing flowers, but you want to do something a little bit different, kind of take it to a new place, or transform those flowers into something more than just an observation, I thought this was very inspiring. And this is the artist who did the wave, probably familiar with that. And 36 Views of Mount Fuji. I found various versions of this, so I'm not entirely sure. I think it is a block print. So obviously this is spring. I don't need to explain too much. We've got pink flowering trees. Very beautiful. But I do like this one for the movement he's created with these arching trees. They're all kind of arching to the right. Then these hills are kind of moving to the left. So you get this kind of this horizon being stretched out this way to the left too, to create some balance, despite there being so much blank space here and so much filled space here. It's just, it's a very nice composition, a lot of movement, kind of get that whirlwind circular feeling. And then we have Almond Blossoms by Vincent van Gogh. So really just zooming in right on the branches themselves. And again, kind of similar to the Ansel Adams, it's becoming like a pattern or an abstraction because we're so focused in on those blossoms that we're missing the big picture. We're not really seeing the landscape or anything else. And that is the end of Signs of Spring. Let's see if I can come back. So I hope that you guys enjoyed that. And I hope that you take some inspiration away from some of the stuff we saw. I'm going to be posting this on YouTube in a few days, hopefully. So if you missed the beginning, don't worry. I will send out a recording and you guys can all see it. But yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube, please share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what you're seeing, what kind of signs of spring you're seeing outside, and what you want to paint next. All right, bye.